Welcome into the show. Today, we're talking about the best quarterback in the country that you've never heard of. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome in. Today, we're talking about, again, one of the best quarterbacks you've probably never heard of. Now, if you're an avid college football fan, that might be a little bit different. You might say, oh, I've definitely heard of this guy. I know everything about him. I know all of his stats. And I'd like to challenge you and say, did you know him when he was playing at an FCS level, or do you only know him now because he's transferred to the Power 5? That's the key question here. Of course, I'm talking about Washington State quarterback Cam Ward. He transferred from Incarnate Word University, or University of Incarnate Word. People would get mad at me if I didn't put the university in front. And now he's going to Washington State. And I think he's such an intriguing player because he's actually in the top 20 in Heisman odds. Can you believe that? Top 20 in Heisman odds at Washington State. Pretty remarkable. For a team that I don't think many people have high expectations for. So let's talk about Cam Ward a little bit. So he had 0 stars coming out of high school, out of Columbia, Texas. He had offers from Texas Southern and Incarnate Word. Those were his 2 offers coming out of high school. Not much made about him, right? No one really knew about him, knew what he could do. And then the spring of 2020 happened. Or spring of 2021 happened, I mean. And I started getting text messages from a friend saying, hey, man, this freshman quarterback at Incarnate Word is lighting it up. And yes, I have a friend that went to Incarnate Word, played basketball there, and he's telling me about this kid, and I know nothing about him, pay no attention to it. He has a great spring. Absolutely goes off, throws for 2,260 yards, 24 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions in 6 games. I mean, those numbers are staggering, guys. I mean, that's incredible. He was freshman of the year in the FCS. And then the most remarkable part is he completed a second season in a 365-day time span. That's right, because he played 6 games in 2021 and then had to do it all again in fall of 2021. And he shows up and just starts throwing touchdowns and putting up numbers every single week. He completed 65% of his passes, threw for 4,648 yards, 47 touchdowns with 10 interceptions. He led Incarnate Word to a 10-3 record. He broke every single Incarnate Word record. He only did it in about, 19 games? That's kind of how bad that program has been, and also how good he was. And so they go 10-3, made it to, they advanced in the FCS playoff, which they'd never done before until he got there. And so he had a super year. And I think a lot of people kind of talk about him and go, okay, so what did he do on the ground? What did he do as a runner? Well, he only had 63 yards and 3 touchdowns during that time span. He's not really a runner. He's a pocket passer. And after his remarkable season, everyone started talking about, okay, transfer portal, right? Because, he was putting up too big of numbers to not get noticed. And so Ole Miss, Houston, Washington State. Those were his 3 big offers. It came down to those 3 or returning to Incarnate Word, but I think everyone saw the writing on the wall that he was probably going to leave. And things got even more interesting because his head coach, Eric Morris, is now the new offense coordinator at Washington State. So he moved from Incarnate Word, then got Cam Ward to go there with him. And so now they're just going to continue this offense that has just been an absolute juggernaut at the FCS level. In the 2 years that they were together at Incarnate Word, they put up 42 points per game in spring of 2021 and 39.5 points per game in fall of 2021. They're putting up numbers. And Cam Ward shows up out of the transfer portal, and their 2-year starter at Washington State, Jayden de Laura, immediately transfers to Arizona. He was not playing over Cam Ward. That's how good Cam Ward was. I'm not saying that de Laura is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but still to replace a 2-year starter that quickly and just be like, yeah, you're not our guy. New regime comes in. Yeah, no, we're going to go with this guy. We're going to go with Cam Ward, the 6'2", 223-pound rock star who's just putting up all these numbers at the FCS level. So moving on to Washington State, I've heard a lot of people talking about, they're not going to be able to protect, Cam Ward. And that's going to be a huge problem because their offensive line was so bad last year. Well, he was sacked 50 times in 19 games at Incarnate Word. The guy is used to getting tackled and harassed in the backfield, and he still put up huge numbers. Washington State lost 3 starters up front. They gave up 31 sacks a season ago, which was 79th in the country. He's going to get sacked. He's probably going to get sacked 35 to 40 times. And yes, that is a problem. That's not something that you want to happen to your quarterback. But it's kind of a factor of a couple things, right? He's going to throw the ball a ton. He's going to be a pocket passer. He's not really eluding a rush at all. So you're going to have sacks, but you're also going to have big plays. Because when you do get protection, the dude is looking downfield and looking to complete huge gains. And that's what he did at Incarnate Word. He'd make a mistake or get sacked, and you'd be at 2nd and 15, and then he's throwing a 50-yard touchdown. It's like, oh, who cares, right? Who cares about that sack that you had? Now, there were other games where the sacks piled up and then the turnovers piled up, and that happens at times as well. I'm not sitting here saying he's the next Vince Young, but what I am saying is you need to pay attention to him and this Washington State offense. They bring back Dezon Stribling, 471 yards, 5 touchdowns. Lincoln Victor, Donovan Oley are back. And then also probably the most intriguing name in their wide receiver room is Renard Bell, who's back for his 7th season. So he broke out in 2017, but then he missed the whole season last year after really having a great 2020. He had 33 receptions for 337 yards and 2 touchdowns in just 4 games. So he really was trending towards being a dynamic weapon for this team, and now no one's talking about him. And I think he's going to be the go-to guy for Cam Ward in this offense. Last year, they averaged 27.8 points per game, 72nd in the country. My breakout projection for Cam Ward is that he's going to get them into the top 30 in scoring offense this year. I think he's going to be phenomenal. I think he's going to lead Washington State to a bowl game, potentially 7 or 8 wins this year, which is massive for a program like Washington State. And he's a guy that I hope everyone keeps an eye on this fall because he's about to put up some massive numbers. So that's it. That's it for Cam Ward. I'm going to have more conversation later in the week. We're going to talk about some realignment factors in the Big 12 and other various content as well. So stay tuned. But for today, this has been Grayson Grunhafer. Thanks for listening.